Hello Spartans and welcome back. This is the second part of my mini-series on becoming a cybersecurity manager. And today we are going to discuss the pros and cons of becoming one. So let's begin. Let's start with the pros. And pro number one is you call the shots. A manager is a manager. They are usually the ones deciding the agenda and objectives of the team, who gets promoted and who doesn't, who gets hired during the interview process, and finally, how the budget for the team is allocated. As a junior or a senior, there is only so much influence that you can have within your own team, because there is always someone above you, in this case, your manager or your lead. But as you climb the corporate ladder, you become more influential, and you are able to drive changes and initiatives that were not possible before. This is one of the reasons why some people decide to become managers, because they want to be able to dictate their future and the future of their own team. Pro number two, smaller effort, larger impact. Managers have a bird's eye view on things. Instead of worrying about alerts, lines of code, and indicators of compromise, they focus instead on larger moving parts such as teams, projects, and mission. The fact that they can delegate responsibilities and tasks to their direct reports helps them keep a high-level view on things and not worry about minutiae. If you spend enough time in cybersecurity, the feeling of burnout is almost inevitable, because tasks such as analyzing malicious code, responding to incidents, or even performing penetration testing can be quite taxing. I have had situations where sometimes I would spend an entire day looking at one simple routine in a piece of malware, or even preparing a tool for production. And at the end of the day, I felt like I accomplished absolutely nothing. Because I'm currently a technical manager, I can see a night and day difference when I switch to a more managerial task, as it may take the same amount of time as a typical technical task, but it is much less mentally taxing and definitely more impactful, as it drives the agenda of my team and the company in a way that no technical task does. Now, don't get me wrong, managing larger projects and even people comes with its fair share of cons, and this will become more clear on the second part of this video. Pro number three, relatively higher salary. Why relatively, you ask? Well, a manager of a team will usually have a higher salary than any of their direct reports. This is normal, it's a matter of hierarchy. However, a manager of a team can sometimes make less money when compared to a cloud security engineer, or perhaps a consultant that works for the same company, or even for another company. This sounds crazy because you would think that a manager should make in theory more money than anyone else in a senior or even lead position. However, when you are comparing earning potential between different positions, you have to take into account several factors. Is the position within the same team or even company? Is the position relevant when compared to a senior position in another department? What is the market looking for and what is offered by the market for this specific position? These are all questions that you should ask yourself. And when you do, it ends up making sense why some managers actually make less money when compared to other people in senior positions. Now, as you can expect, not everything is good about the manager life. Let's look at some cons. Con number one is, at some point, you will feel technically obsolete and useless. As someone who used to spend hours at work and outside work dabbling with tech, a management position was not something that was easy for me to embrace. I always felt that the best measure of success as a professional was technical or hard skills, and soft skills were something reserved for lazy people that didn't want to put the work. Now, funny enough, this is the mindset that a lot of hardcore techies have, and this is the reason why they end up shying away from managerial positions. If you think like this, becoming a manager might make you feel useless. I remember some days when I didn't touch any tech and was simply doing some research or putting together documentation for projects. And I must admit that I felt quite obsolete and useless when this happened. Even though I put this as a con, this is actually a mindset problem. And the reason for this is that techies and managers have different problems to solve. And by extension, they must have a different mindset. This is why I recommend that if you want to become a manager, start by becoming a technical manager. And a technical manager is basically someone that is able to still play with tech, but at the same time, they are managing a team and larger projects. If you do this, the transition to full management is going to be much smoother, and you will realize that being a manager is not so bad. Con number two, you are now responsible for people. And oh boy, this is a big one. Any sitcom with an IT guy will most likely depict them as someone with poor social skills and awareness. They are usually the butt of the joke because they are quote-unquote losers, and more often than not, they are single. I believe that a lot of the struggles that IT people face when dealing with people, and especially the opposite gender, stem from the fact that computers are built to be 90% predictable. If a program doesn't compile, chances are it's your fault. Now, when you switch to dealing with people, this is a completely different ballgame. And you realize that unpredictability is the bread and butter of social dynamics. And this is something that scares techies a lot because they are used to having control within their own tech realm. Now, as a manager, you need to fulfill several responsibilities. The first one is that you must keep your people happy and help them grow. This becomes quite challenging as your team grows. As a manager, you will have to juggle many responsibilities outside of normal people management, and it is quite easy for you to drop the ball and neglect the needs of your direct reports. And this is the perfect recipe for the surprise resignation letter on your desk. The second responsibility is that manager must manage conflict within their own team. Conflict and toxicity can be quite corrosive for teams and relationships. Part of being a good manager is being able to filter out troublemakers during the interview process. But this is not always possible, and some of them still manage to slip through. Even large companies such as FANGs with convoluted hiring processes still fail to filter out people that can become a problem to the company. It just happens. Another responsibility is taking responsibility and giving credit where credit is due. If you are a junior or a senior and you make a mistake, it's usually on you. However, as a manager, if one of your direct reports makes a mistake, it is their fault and also yours. As an example, if you are a SOC manager and one of your analysts closes a critical alert as a false positive, and then it turns out that it's actually APT, this is a massive problem for you because your team failed to deliver what was expected. Once you become a manager, you are the face of your own team. You are responsible for making sure that the requirements from upper management are met, and if they are not, you are in trouble. At the same time, giving credit is also extremely important. And being able to give credit properly is something that as a manager you must master at all costs. The worst thing that can happen to you is promoting someone that does not deserve to be promoted. Someone that is working much less and is instead a smooth talker. You will create a bad environment where some of your coworkers will not only hate the person that was rewarded, if they don't already, but also you. The final responsibility that I want to mention is being a communication buffer. The worst managers are the ones that relay messages from upper management to their teams and vice versa directly, with no sort of filtering. They don't make any efforts to rephrase the message or even push back on demands from either of the sides. They are passive actors and their mindset is simply, they said it, not me. A proper manager mediates or buffers the conversation between these two parts. As an example, if upper management imposes overtime on your team, you as a good manager will either push back with a solid argument or find a balance between what is demanded by upper management and what your team is able to deliver. At the very least, the manager should explain to their direct reports the situation in a way that does not upset most or affect morale. Now, switching to the point of view of the team, if the team is disgruntled about the new rules, the manager should first discuss the situation within the team and try to strike a balance between what is required from upper management and what the team wants. And then the manager can go back to upper management and explain the situation with proper facts and a new solution that strikes a good balance between what is needed and what is being asked for. Regardless of any of these capabilities, you will learn as a manager that pleasing people is extremely hard. And not everyone within your team is going to be happy about everything. This is part and parcel of being part of a company and something that you should be aware of. Con number 3, there is always someone above. In life, you will always report to someone. As a kid, you report to your parents. As an employee, you report to your manager. And even as an entrepreneur, you report to your customers or the shareholders of your company. Leadership positions within companies exist to delegate responsibility and turn companies with hundreds or even thousands of employees into predictable and manageable hierarchies, where there is always someone that is responsible for someone or something else. Managers can manage themselves and their direct reports. If you decided to move up the corporate ladder because you want to dictate the agenda of your own team, you will find that now you are trying to fulfill the agenda of someone else. And you need to define the agenda of your team, the objectives, the deadlines, based on someone else's agenda. This may feel like a dystopian form of freedom, but it is a reality. If you are a junior or a senior, this should bring you some solace to an extent. You may have not realized this, but your manager is actually shielding you from a lot of crap and nonsense that you probably don't want to deal with. But if you choose to, you will. And that is it, Spartans. 3 pros and 3 cons of becoming a cybersecurity manager. While some of the hardcore techies out there hate the idea of managing people, I can tell you that it can be a quiet, rewarding job. And if you still don't like the idea, let me rephrase it in a different way. Leadership is an invaluable skill that not only requires you to manage and understand people, but also communicate effectively. When you start your career, these topics and ideas are kind of foreign to you. But trust and believe when I tell you this. Leaving these skills unattended until much later in your life will lead to a lot of frustration when you are pushed to lead, which is something that is inevitable, or you decide to switch your focus, the focus of your life, to people. This applies not only to work, but also relationships outside of work. Now, I can tell you that I'm quite social and I attend a lot of social events. And as a consequence, I've met a lot of people. What I can say is that very few people have these skills that I just mentioned. And that translates into plenty of awkward situations. The kind of situations where you don't want to find yourself in. If for nothing else, poor communication skills is going to lead to a lot of misunderstandings and frustration with people. And you will find yourself unable to explain why people are reacting the way they are reacting around you. That is not a position where you want to find yourself in. So suck it up and learn to be a leader. Until next time, stay safe, stay paranoid.